Hi everybody, welcome to the June Lunch and Learn session. I'm Sarah Klossig, I'm the Council Strategic Marketing Manager, and I'll be managing today's session with the wonderful help of my wonderful colleague George, whose name you might hear a few times throughout the presentation. Hopefully you're aware that today's topic is around social value, and we'll be hearing more about that shortly. I just wanted to say thank you very much for taking the time to join us this lunchtime and hear more about this really important topic for the Council. For anyone who hasn't been to a session before, as an attendee, you don't have access to your camera or microphone, so you can sit back and relax, but you do have access to our Q&A chat box. So please do add any comments or questions as we go along, and we'll come back to them at the end of the presentation during the Q&A slot. The session will be recorded, so please note that any comments or questions you make will be featured on the recording, but you can post anonymously if that's what you prefer to do. The Lunch and Learn series will be taking a break over the summer, but will return in September. We've already got loads of great topics lined up for the autumn, details of which I'll share in future internal staff communications over the next couple of months. So I'll now hand you over to Carol Glenn, who's the Social Value Programme Manager, and Emma Tebbutt, the Commercialisation Manager, who will present today's topic. Over to you, Carol. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. So yes, I'm Carol Glenn. For those who don't know me, I'm the Social Value Programme Manager and I sit within the procurement team. And presenting with me today is Emma Tebbutt. She's the Commercialisation Manager in the Funding and Commercialisation team in the Economy and Infrastructure Directorate. And we both work together on social value and implementing it across the Council. So next slide, George. So the agenda today, just a little note that because this is a Lunch and Learn awareness session, we're not going to be going into too much detail about the whys and wherefores and how to apply social value to your individual contracts. But if you want to know more, there is a social value e-learning module on the learning pool, and there are some social value intranet pages which we'll show you at the end. But you can also contact myself and Emma if you want to know more. And if there's enough interest, we can do an in-depth training session if enough people ask for it. So let us know if you're interested in that. So we're going to start today talking about what social value is, and we're going to talk about how social value feeds into inclusive growth, how we implement social value at the Council. And then we're going to do a little bit around perspectives. So Emma and I can't do this on our own. And there's a number of pieces in the social value jigsaw puzzle to make it happen. So we will look at the different roles involved across the Council that can influence how social value is delivered. And then we'll go through a few key headlines. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Emma, who'll tell you what social value is. Next slide, George.
Thanks, Carol. So social value can sometimes be seen as a procurement thing, but it's really fast becoming something that is commonplace around us. I don't know how many of you recognise this picture, but it's taken from the 2020 John Lewis TV ad. It was a heartfelt, feel-good advert to pull on the heartstrings. But more than that, it was a campaign where John Lewis and Waitrose were highlighting how they were working with their partner charities, in this instance Home Start and Fair Share, through donations of essential food, goods, support and money to those in the community hit hardest by the pandemic. And of course, it wasn't just John Lewis or Waitrose who were doing this. Many organisations were supporting their communities in whatever ways they could. John Lewis also has their own charitable giving scheme, Community Matters. They donate 5 pence to charity from each carrier bag sale they make. And they have a sofa reuse scheme, where your old sofa can be reused or recycled in conjunction with local charities, with the aim of supporting disadvantaged communities. So why is this all important? Because it shows how a large retailer like John Lewis are dealing with their social value obligations. And it's also important because John Lewis are one of the biggest employers in Solihull Town Centre, with their main shop, Waitrose, and their huge warehouse on the outskirts of town. Next slide, please, George. And like I said, it's not just John Lewis or Waitrose. If we look at another large employer in Solihull, JLR, for example, Land Rover plans new EV models in the next 5 years, with the first due to arrive in 2024. Land Rover is also betting on hydrogen fuel cell technology, with plans to field prototypes in the next 12 months. The plans are part of JLR's Reimagine strategy, which will see them become a net zero business by the year 2039. This fits in with our council plan and also SMBC's own ambitions of the borough becoming net carbon zero by 2041. Next slide, please, George. And everywhere you look, there are more examples of social value. Inch Cider, they state that all their apple waste is turned into green energy, enough to power 1,000 homes every year, and all their cider is made from apples grown within 40 miles of their mill in Herefordshire. This is what social value is all about. They're saving waste, creating biofuel and keeping local supply chains in business, often not changing what they do, but how they are doing it. PG Tips were one of the first to support tea farmers to make sure they are paid a fair price for their tea, with access to good housing, healthcare and education. Their tea bags are also one of the only ones that are biodegradable, which means that when you put them in the compost bin, they completely compost down and don't leave the bag in the compost bin. And lastly, Persil has launched its new liquid formulation. According to their marketing, the new product is both tough on stain and kinder to our planet, thanks to changes made to both packaging and formulation. The bottles are now made with 50% post-consumer recycled plastic, are 100% recyclable, and the dosing ball previously provided with every bottle has now been removed, all of which reduces the amount of virgin plastic in Persil's bottles by more than 1,000 tonnes annually. Next slide, please, George. So how does this link to what we do here at Solihull? Well, unlike PG Tips and JLR, what the public sector does in regards to social value is embedded in the Public Services Social Value Act, which came into force on the 31st of January 2013. It required people who commission public services to think about how they can also secure wider social, economic and environmental benefits. The law only requests that we consider social value, but SMBC includes it in all procurements. Rather unhelpfully, the Act didn't define what was meant by social value. So the local authority has adapted the definition of social value as set out by the Sustainable Procurement Task Force. It's quite a lengthy definition, but here we go. A process whereby organisations meet their needs for goods, services, works and utilities in a way that achieves value for money on a whole life basis in terms of generating benefits not only to the organisation but also to society and the economy, whilst minimising damage to the environment. In plain English terms, it is about generating additional value from the contract over and above the value of the contract itself. It is about how we can stretch our pound further by getting the best service at the cheapest price, but with a little added extra for the community that we serve, something that will increasingly become even more important. So to deliver against these obligations, we have a social value policy. The revised version was approved by Cabinet in December 2021. The purpose of this policy was to formally embed social value into all procurement processes followed by the Council, in line with the priorities in the Council plan. Anyone interested in reading the policy can find it on the intranet under the social value pages. While the policy focuses on procurement, it also recognises that social value can also be delivered through other levers, such as planning and the use of Council's land and property assets, as well as working with stakeholders in relation to the broader corporate social responsibility agenda. Local social values priorities are driven by the Council plan, which outlines Council's vision, purpose and ambition for Solihull. Delivery of the social value policy will support delivery of the Council priorities through wise use of the procurement power, which ensures maximum benefit for our local communities when letting contracts. The Council Plan 2020-25 highlights that social value will drive inclusive growth through the Council's role as an employer, procurer, service provider and system influencer. Next slide, please, George. So like I've already highlighted, SMBC has a legal obligation to pay due regard to social value, but its inclusion is about making every pound we spend work harder in terms of the benefits it helps us achieve for our local community. Next slide, please, George.
So, as highlighted in the Council plan, social value is a key tool to drive forward inclusive growth. And while it's particularly referenced in relation to procurement, it is also important in terms of our role as the system influencer, so that we can influence not only the added value of our spend and services, but also that of other major organisations that have impacted on the borough. Next slide, please. So the revised social value policy that Emma just mentioned was adopted in December 2021, and that has brought in some new weightings, additional weightings for certain measures that align with the council plan priorities and therefore support the delivery of the inclusive growth outcomes. We'll explain a little bit more about that later on, but it makes it clear how social value can contribute to quite a few of the council's main objectives. Next slide. So the takeaway on this part is actually social value is a key tool to drive forward inclusive growth, but actually quite a few other of the council's policies as well. Next slide. So social value has now been included in our tenders at Solihull for the last 3 years, and we're seeing some really good results coming from it. We include it in all of our tenders over £50,000 unless there's a specific reason why we wouldn't want to include it. Those reasons are very few and far between. We found that the earlier we include social value in the procurement process, the better. So it's included in the procurement approval document, the PAD, that goes to procurement board on the larger tenders. And social value is additional value, so it captures those extra things that the supplier can deliver in addition to what is included in the main specification. So that is why we include it early, to decide what is core to the contract and what is not. And then we can direct the supplier through the tender documents to offer what we as a council want them to deliver based on the priorities outlined earlier. Now, in most cases, we use the social value portal to track and monitor the social value that is promised and delivered. Now, the social value portal is an online tool, but as a company, they also offer the suppliers and us advice on social value and how to manage their delivery. Now, within the social value portal, there is a framework that is used to actually measure the social value, and that framework is called the National TOMS. Now, TOMS stands for Themes, Outcomes and Measures, and basically it's a list of things that suppliers can do. So the 5 overarching themes within which there are a number of outcomes, and the outcomes are basically the objectives to be achieved within those themes. And then what the suppliers are really interested in are the measures, because the measures are the practical things that they can do to achieve those outcomes. Now, the 5 themes that I mentioned are jobs, growth, social, environment and innovation. And those 5 themes align quite nicely to the council plan that Emma showed you earlier. So there's nothing new in what we're trying to achieve here. And in the last few months, we've prioritised some of those measures that align best to our council plan. And those priority TOMs have been allocated a TOM lead. Now, the leads are the experts in their fields, and they can help direct social value where it needs to be delivered. We'll go into that a little bit more detail later on. But social value, as we've said, isn't just about procurement. We are looking at it in other processes like planning, but we're also looking at it from a corporate social responsibility point of view. So what we need you to do is to start thinking what you and your team can do to deliver social value to the residents of Solihull. For example, can you have a day out of the team to volunteer at a local community group? Is there a service that you would love to deliver to your customers, but you don't have the expertise and the resources to deliver? Could a supplier help us deliver that service? And could that supplier help us achieve our team objectives in any way? And what we can do as a team and as a council to make that extra difference to the residents of Solihull. Next slide. Now, we see delivery of social value as a partnership approach. We don't want to see our suppliers fail when they've targeted themselves to help us and our residents. So when we're doing a tender, think about what social value you would want to see as part of your contract right at the very start of the process. You can do a bit of research to see what suppliers are delivering to other councils. And if there's something specific, then make it clear and include it in your tender documents. So, for example, in the stationery contract, we wanted to deliver stationery packs for our care leavers. We included that request in our tender documents, and Lyrico are now delivering just that for us, as well as other things, obviously, but that's one of the things that we specifically asked them to do. So talk to people around the business and ask how they can help you achieve certain objectives. For example, we have people in the communities team that can put you in touch with community projects that might need some volunteering time. We have the employment and skills team that can help employers with employment targets and employing people with disabilities, etc. So there are people around the council who can help. And when you deliver as a partnership and work together with others, they're more likely to want to deliver more for you. So keep talking to your suppliers to see what they can deliver for us. If social value isn't included in your current contract, have a word with the supplier and see what they could have done had it been included. What are they delivering on other contracts as well? Most companies have corporate social responsibility or social value policies in place, and they're really eager to show us what they can do, because what Emma was showing you earlier on were all adverts, and social value and corporate social responsibility is a really hot topic and shows the ethics of a good company. Then what you need to do is measure what has changed. How has that event helped people? What was the outcome? And once you've measured that, you can report on it and shout from the rooftops about what has been achieved and the good work that's been done. And managing relationships with your suppliers is really important. Can't stress it enough. If you get a good relationship going with your suppliers, they will really find it difficult to say no when you ask for a favour. And support goes a long way. When I started this job 3 years ago, I thought that social value would just happen as if by magic, but actually it happens more if you support delivery. Keep an eye on how things are progressing. You get a real buzz when you realise a positive change has happened because of the support that you've given. I know it sounds like a cliche, but that warm glow is what makes social value worthwhile. Next slide. So the takeaway from this section is that we need to work together with other teams in the council, the community and the suppliers. We have we've been much more successful in getting delivered social value if we keep the channels of communication open and treat it as a partnership. Suppliers have the responsibility to do their bit for the residents of Solihull, but we also have the responsibility to make sure it's delivered in the way we want it. Next slide, George.
So when thinking about social value in the procurement process, there are 3 main stages: pre-contract, delivery, and outcome benefit stage. At each stage, there are different things to consider and different roles to play, and we thought it would be useful to look at social value from each of these differing perspectives. It is important to remember that even if you are not a contract manager, your team or service area can still benefit from social value and therefore still have a role to play. Next slide.
So the first perspective we're going to be looking at is the contract manager, and social value is part of the main contract. So you need to manage the social value as well as the delivery of the core contract. But to do that, you need to be involved right from the start. Determine what is part of the core contract and then think about what added extras the supplier could provide. For example, they can support women into construction jobs. They can help kids with their CVs. They can do some volunteering at a local community group, or they could donate laptops to kids in need. Now, contract managers, you are not on your own. You can get support from the TOM lead or the social value team, myself and Emma. So if you do need any help with your social value, get in touch. At the start of the contract, I usually organise an onboarding meeting with the supplier, and it always works best if the contract manager is there as well to go through the targets, go through the portal and make sure that we're all on the same page, know what is expected of each of us. And the most important part of the contract management is to add social value to the agenda of your performance management meetings. During that item, ask the supplier what they've done to progress their social value delivery. And if they're falling behind, just ask them if they need help. We can flex the targets and we can come to some arrangement if they're struggling, but we need to know about it. So make sure that you're monitoring their social value targets the same way you would any other KPI under the contract. If you're contract managing a contract and you don't know what the targets are set for your supplier, get in touch with me and I'll be able to let you know. Next slide. We were going to ask David, who is our homelessness contract manager, but I don't think he's on the presenter view, so we'll move on to the next slide if that's okay. So the next angle we're going to look at is from the supplier's perspective, and the contractor sets social value delivery targets as part of the tender, and the target should be set for the whole length of the contract. Now, the social value is scored during the evaluation based on the amount of the targets, but also the quality of the submission to help establish the winning bidder. Now, this means that it's not just the highest bid that wins the social value element, it is the best overall submission, which reflects the social value that is most likely to be achieved. Now, the contractor is responsible for the delivery of social value to the amount that they set in their tender. They're also responsible for inserting the social value details of what they've delivered, including any evidence, into the social value portal. Now, suppliers can seek support from the contract manager through those regular contract management meetings. Or if there are any issues, the contract manager or the supplier can contact me direct to discuss what alternatives we can come up with. And at the end of the contract, the supplier will get a report that shows exactly what social value they've delivered. And they can use this in newsletters, press releases, other tenders and their own CSR reports. So we're going to hear now from one of our contractors. If you click onto the next slide, George, and stop the audio. This is Rachel Anderson, who's dealing with our multi-storey car park.
My name is Rachel Anderson and I'm leading the social value for the UGC project on behalf of Vinci Construction. At the moment, we are in the first phase of the project, which is specifically just design. And throughout this process, we have worked closely with the council and UGC to deliver work experience, educational activities and volunteering with local organisations and charities. Social value is at the heart of Vinci Construction, and our people are passionate about enhancing the communities that we work in by making them better, environmentally, economically and socially. Our mission is to deliver meaningful, lasting legacies within the communities we serve, and we believe that opportunities should be available to all people, no matter what their background. We know that social value looks different to everyone, and what benefits one community wouldn't necessarily work in another, and therefore collaboration is key. We see our relationship with Solihull Council and the Urban Growth Company as a partnership, and we strive to deliver meaningful and tangible benefits to the community. To us, social value means that we have an impact on the local communities by working as partnership, but with local stakeholders. This includes job creation, dealing with environmental issues, and the long-lasting legacy we leave behind after we've completed our build. We're doing this and funding numerous initiatives aimed at developing local people's life skills, life chances, and enhancing the local environment. and our people are always ready to donate their time, energy and skills to these rewarding projects. Working together, we will deliver something unique and tangible that will help the future generations to come. With our established track record in creating lasting social legacies throughout the UK, we have built a reputation for delivering on behalf of our clients and its local communities. When we leave something inspirational behind.
Thanks, George. If you move on to the next slide, I can actually show you some of the things that Vinci have so far achieved for us. So as Rachel said, we are in this early stages of the whole project. We're just in the design phase, but this is all that they have provided for us so far, from local employment, apprenticeships, dedicating hours to support young people into work. They've spent nearly £1 million in local supply chain and 300,000 to local micro and SMEs. But the interesting thing that they've also done for us is that 6,250 donations or in-kind contributions. So they've done a hygiene product donation from their supply chain and Vinci staff and donated them to people in need. And they've also donated time and help with a mobile therapy unit for the local community and gifted a brand new generator worth £500 in relation to that. Now they're working with Solihull Cricket Club and donating material to them for a new path, but also they've got signed a 3-year sponsorship deal, which will improve their youth development side. And UGC, who are the buyers for this particular contract, have kindly donated 12 chairs to Solo Living for their staff. So that just goes to show some of the things that we can do as the buying organisation, just donate stuff. And the volunteering time that they've done, so they've given painting operatives and an electrician for that mobile therapy unit, and they've also helped with gardening projects, which you can see on the next slide. So the photos here are a snapshot of the amazing work that Vinci have done with Solo, and it's based at their base in Walnut Close in Chelmsley Wood. And they've had 10 people working really hard to renovate that garden area and make it more user-friendly. And what they're going to be doing is going to be coming back on an ongoing basis to maintain it. They're going to plant a hedge to screen off the back fence and brighten up some of the inside space as well with a refresh of paint. So it just goes to show some of the difference that can be made, but you know, it's just a small thing really. They've got lots of more things planned as well. They've got workshops. They're going to be working with Bernardo's and the youth offending team to do some mock interviews and CV writing. They're going to be doing Sleep Out to Help Out in December, which helps the homelessness. And they're going to be doing a book donation drive later in the year. So there's lots of things, you know, it's not just stopping here in the first few months. They're going to continue giving us social value for the good months to come. Next slide. So the takeaway from these two parts is that good contract management delivers good social value. It doesn't happen on its own, so you will need to chase delivery just like you would any other KPI on your contract. And most suppliers are eager to show us what they can do. Some of the things that Vinci have done shows a wide breadth of what suppliers can do for us, but we need to make sure that it is what the residents of Solihull want and need. So we need to guide them to deliver meaningful social value. Next slide.
Thanks, Carol. So Tom Lead is the third perspective. We are currently starting to trial a new approach with the introduction of Tom Leads. As Carol has already alluded to, we at Solihull use the Social Value Portal to evaluate the majority of our contracts, and track the delivery of their social value. To ensure that tender returns are evaluated fairly, all prospective contractors are asked to select the social value that they can deliver through their contract using a set of what we call TOMs. TOMs stands for Themes, Outcomes and Measures, and as Cara's already said, these are largely categorised under the headings of jobs, growth, social, environment and innovation. To direct social value at the Council's priorities, we utilise the Council Plan and have used this to focus down on a more finite list of what we call priority TOMs. These are the measures that link closely to our authority's key priorities, but we also found that we needed experts within the directorates to help us direct social value further. Hence the nomination of TOM leads. These are the experts in their areas and were nominated due to their connection to the priority TOM measure. The TOM lead approach is still in its infancy and is something that we will keep under review, but it is hoped that social value will be maximised as a result of their input. Next slide, please. Now, I was hoping that Tom Dixon would be talking about his TOM, because he's a TOM lead in employment and skills, but it doesn't look like he's managed to join us today. So we'll skip to the next slide, please, George. So service area. Social value cannot displace the work of a service area, cannot deliver in the main cashable savings, but can help to add value and help bolster the delivery of departmental or local authority objectives. Many social value opportunities help organisations, community groups or charities outside of the local authority and helping to achieve our ambitions, whether that be our aim of the borough being net carbon zero by 2041, our aim to plant 250,000 trees by 2030, or air quality to be improved by 2025. Next slide, please, George. And these are some of the key headlines of the current social value commitments. 4.46 million has been committed to be spent in the local supply chain. This has been generated through local spend on various projects across the borough. Langley Hall Pond Restoration, Newts and Shoots, which is a project run by the Claude team, and 2 school construction projects, Kingshurst and Alton. Contracts like housing related support for people with disabilities and the new strategic environmental services contract through Veolia and a number of other smaller contracts are taking on a combined total of 43 employees who are classed as NEET, so not in employment, education or training. Veolia has committed to recruit 10% of its operatives from marginalised groups, helping people gain work after being long-term unemployed, or if they've been an ex-offender or been homeless. And the parking and environment service contracts have committed to 2,224 apprenticeship weeks for local students. And 163 local people are expected to be employed across 31 of our contracts. As Rachel from Vinci has explained, Vinci is committed to 160 hours of volunteering time through their contract they have with Urban Growth Company to deliver the first phase of Arden Cross multi-storey car park. And there's more social value if you look around. The Armed Forces Memorial Garden was constructed in part through Balfour Beatty's social value commitments and the relationship they had with our highways team. Next slide, please, George. And social value commitments are increasing year on year as more contractors understand social value and understand how to deliver it. Next slide, please. So our final takeaway is social value can add value to the delivery of your service and service outcomes, even if you are not responsible for the procurement or delivery of a contract. Next slide, please.
So here's the web pages that I mentioned right at the beginning of the presentation. If you want to find out more, there's lots of information there. It's under teams and then corporate procurement, and then there's a section all about social value, split into lots of things to tell you about the portal, the TOMs, the policy itself, and other links and useful contacts. But if you need to know anything else, you can contact myself or Emma or raise anything in the Q&A right now. But yeah, just let us know if you've got any questions.
Thank you very much, Carol and Emma. That was brilliant and really insightful. I know recently I've been working on a couple of tender processes, and we've been really interested to see the social value proposals that different agencies have put in for some marketing campaigns that we've been looking at, which is really good. and using people in the local area and that sort of thing. So yeah, thank you. I can't see any questions at the moment. If anybody wants to pop them in, I know there's a little bit of a delay, so we'll leave it a little bit longer to see. And just a reminder that, as I mentioned at the beginning, I think we've had a few people join since then, that the sessions will take a little bit of a break over July and August, and then they'll be back in September. We've already got 3 or 4 lined up, so I'll share information on those over the summer in the usual places, on the intranet, on in our staff magazine, and wherever else you've seen it, hopefully in Nick's message too. So I can't see any questions. Was there anything you wanted to add, Emma or Carol, or have we covered everything?
No, I think we've covered anything, but you know, of course, if you just need to know any more details, if you've got anything specific on a contract that you've got, just get in touch with us.
Brilliant, thanks Carol. And yeah, so the recording will be made available over the next few days. I'll pop it in the next staff magazine, our Solihull, so that you can share it with any of your colleagues who weren't able to join today. And there'll be a link to all the past ones as well. So if you want to have a look at any of those, we've had Commonwealth Games, climate change and sustainability and fostering. So you can share those with everybody and have a little look over those over the summer. Brilliant. Thanks everyone so much for joining. See you again soon. Bye.